What if I told you that the single greatest force shaping your life isn't talent, luck, or even hard work? It's something far quieter, far more consistent, and often invisible. Repetition. The small, repeated actions you take each day are silently writing your future. They can lift you to unimaginable success, or slowly pull you into failure, without fanfare or warning. In the next 2 hours, you'll see how this hidden power works, how to control it, and how to make it your greatest ally in building the life you want. Chapter 1. The silent force that shapes your life. We tend to believe life changes in big moments, winning a contract, getting a promotion, starting a business, meeting the right person. But the truth is, life is shaped by the things that happen over and over again, not the rare events that flash in our memory. A single workout won't make you fit, just like a single missed meal won't make you unhealthy. But the repetition of each, good or bad, changes everything. Think of it like water wearing down rock. 1 drop does nothing. 10 drops barely make a mark. But given time, those drops carve canyons. That's what repetition does to your life. Every action you take, no matter how small, is a drop. And the direction of those drops, positive or negative, will determine where you end up. Most people underestimate this force because it's quiet. If you eat 1 donut today, nothing happens. If you skip the gym once, no visible harm is done. That's why it's so easy to let small negative habits slip by without notice. But life compounds them silently, and before you know it, the results are unavoidable. The key is awareness. If you don't pay attention to what you're repeating, you can drift into a life you never intended to live. It's not about what you do once in a while. It's about what you do regularly without thinking. Your morning routine, your conversations, how you react to stress, how often you complain, the way you start your workday. These repetitions form your reality. You might be thinking, but I want change, big change. Doesn't that take a big effort? Ironically, no. Massive effort in short bursts rarely sticks. The transformation comes from small actions done repeatedly until they become automatic. That's why repetition is both the most dangerous and the most empowering force in your life. Dangerous if you're repeating the wrong things. Empowering if you choose the right ones. Consider the person who spends 10 minutes a day reading a book versus the one who spends that same time scrolling on their phone. In a single day, there's no difference. But in a year, one has read several books, grown their knowledge, and opened doors of opportunity. The other has filled their mind with noise. Both made their choice once, then let repetition handle the rest. To take control of your life, you must first recognize the silent patterns already shaping it. This means asking yourself, what do I do daily without thinking? And more importantly, what is that doing to me? Awareness is the starting point. You cannot change what you do not see. Once you understand that repetition is quietly molding your life, you stop chasing motivation and start designing patterns. You begin to deliberately install actions worth repeating. And that's where the magic happens. Not in the big moments, but in the quiet, consistent ones no one claps for. Chapter 2. Habits, your invisible architects. If repetition is the force shaping your life, then habits are the blueprints. They are the invisible architects behind every result you experience. The tricky part is, most of your habits weren't consciously chosen. They were formed by repetition without awareness. And now they run in the background, building your life whether you approve of the design or not. A habit is simply a repeated action that's become automatic. You don't have to decide to brush your teeth, you just do it. You don't decide to check your phone when you hear a notification. Your hand moves before your brain catches up. The brain loves habits because they save energy. Instead of thinking through every step, it just runs a stored program. But here's the problem. The brain doesn't judge whether a habit is good or bad. It doesn't care if it's leading you toward your goals or away from them. It just reinforces whatever you repeat. That's why so many people stay stuck, not because they lack talent, but because their habits are building the wrong future. Imagine you have 2 construction crews working on your life. One is building the life you want: health, skills, relationships, income. The other is building a life of stress, poor health, and regret. Every habit you have belongs to one crew or the other. And here's the truth: whichever crew you give the most materials to will win. Habits form through a simple cycle: cue, routine, reward. Something triggers the behavior, the cue. You perform the action, the routine, and you get some form of benefit, the reward. For example, stress, cue, leads you to eat junk food, routine, and you feel temporary comfort, reward. Repeat that often enough, and your brain wires it in. The beauty is, once you understand this, you can re-engineer your habits. You can identify the cues that trigger bad habits and replace the routine with something positive that still delivers a reward. You're not fighting your brain. You're redirecting it. Consider someone who wants to write a book. If they wait for inspiration, it may never come. But if they make a habit of writing for 20 minutes every morning after coffee, the repetition builds momentum. Soon, it's harder not to write than to write. That's the power of habits. They shift effort from conscious decision-making to automatic action. The fastest way to change your life isn't to overhaul everything at once. It's to install one or two keystone habits that trigger a chain reaction of positive change. For example, regular exercise often improves diet, sleep, and confidence without deliberate effort in those areas. Morning planning can lead to more productive days without needing to force discipline later. The key takeaway is this: you are not at the mercy of your habits. You are their architect. If you want a different life, you must design different blueprints. That begins with identifying the habits you have now, deciding which to keep, which to replace, and which to build from scratch. Because whether you like it or not, your invisible architects are already at work. Chapter 3: Why Willpower Fails Without Repetition. We often glorify willpower as the ultimate tool for success. We picture people achieving greatness because they had an iron will, an unshakable determination. But here's the truth: most don't realize willpower is not built to last. It's a finite resource, like a phone battery. You can use it for a while, but if you rely on it alone, you'll eventually run out of charge. That's why so many resolutions collapse within weeks. In January, the gyms are full. By February, they're half empty. The people didn't suddenly stop caring about their goals. They just burned through their willpower without having systems to keep them going. And that's where repetition comes in. When you repeat an action long enough, it becomes automatic. Automatic means it no longer drains your willpower to do it. Think of brushing your teeth. You don't need motivation or a pep talk. It's simply part of your day. Compare that to trying to start a workout habit. In the beginning, it takes energy just to get yourself to move. But after weeks or months of repetition, it becomes as normal as putting on clothes in the morning. This is why willpower without repetition fails. It's like trying to keep a heavy door open with sheer force, rather than installing a doorstop. Willpower can hold the door for a while, but repetition is the doorstop. It keeps the habit in place without constant effort. Many people misunderstand motivation and willpower as the foundation of success. Motivation is the spark that gets you started, and willpower is the short-term fuel that keeps you going for a bit. But repetition is what cements the habit, so you can keep moving without constant mental strain. Without repetition, every action requires fresh effort, and eventually, you give up. Consider two people learning to play guitar. Person A practices intensely for 3 hours once a week when they feel inspired. Person B practices for 20 minutes every day, even when they don't feel like it. After 6 months, Person B will likely be far better. Not because they practiced longer in total hours, but because their repetition trained their fingers, built muscle memory, and made the skill a natural part of their life. The same principle applies to every goal: fitness, career growth, learning, relationships. Short bursts of willpower may give you progress in the moment, but only repetition locks in the result. This is why professional athletes, musicians, writers, and entrepreneurs rely on routines, not on waking up each day and hoping they feel motivated. If you've ever started something with enthusiasm but fizzled out, It's not because you're weak. It's because you relied on willpower instead of turning the behavior into a repeated, automatic process. That's the shift you need to make. The goal is not to be endlessly motivated. The goal is to need less motivation by letting repetition carry the weight. So here's the truth. Willpower is your starter motor. Repetition is your engine. You need willpower to start the car, but if you try to drive using only the starter motor, you'll burn it out. Your job is to get the engine of habit running so you can keep moving forward without having to force it every single day. Chapter 4. The Science of Doing It Again and Again. Repetition isn't just a nice self-help concept. It's a principle deeply rooted in how your brain works. Every time you repeat an action, you're wiring your brain to make it easier to do next time. Scientists call this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on experience. Think of your brain like a field of grass. The first time you take a new action, it's like stepping through tall, uncut grass, slow, awkward, and unclear. But each time you repeat the action, you trample the same path. Over time, the grass lays flat, a trail forms, and eventually it becomes the easiest way to move forward. That's why habits, both good and bad, get stronger the more you repeat them. Inside your brain, neurons communicate through electrical signals. When you repeat a behavior, the same neurons fire together, over and over. This strengthens their connection, a process known as long-term potentiation. In simple terms, neurons that fire together wire together. This is why learning a skill, playing a sport, or memorizing something becomes easier with repetition. It's not just memory, it's physical rewiring. But here's the catch. This process works for both positive and negative behaviors. If you repeatedly procrastinate when faced with a task, you're wiring your brain to take that route automatically in the future. If you repeatedly choose healthy meals, you're wiring your brain to see them as normal and easy. The brain doesn't care whether the path is good or bad, it just reinforces whatever you repeat. This is why breaking bad habits feels so hard. You're not just making a different choice. You're trying to carve a new path in the brain while the old one is still there. That's why repetition is essential when building new habits. It's not enough to try them once or twice. You need to walk the new path so many times that it becomes the easier one to take. There's also the dopamine factor. Dopamine is often misunderstood as the pleasure chemical. In reality, it's more about anticipation and motivation. When you repeat an action and get a rewarding outcome, whether that's finishing a workout, hearing applause, or even getting likes on social media, your brain releases dopamine. This chemical signal tells your brain, do that again. Over time, even the cue for the habit, like putting on your running shoes, can trigger dopamine, motivating you to follow through. Think of elite performers. A concert pianist doesn't rehearse the same passage hundreds of times because they enjoy it every time. They do it because repetition ingrains it so deeply that they can perform under pressure without thought. Surgeons practice procedures repeatedly so that in high-stakes moments, the steps are automatic. Repetition removes hesitation and uncertainty. The takeaway here is simple. Repetition is not about robotic behavior. It's about creating neural shortcuts so the right action becomes the natural action. The brain is a powerful tool, but it's lazy in a good way. It will always prefer the well-worn path. Your job is to make sure the well-worn path leads to where you want to go. When you understand this science, you stop asking, why do I need to keep doing this every day? And start asking, how can I make the right action the easiest one to repeat? That's the question that separates wishful thinking from transformation. Chapter 5. Small wins, big transformations. We love the idea of massive change, the before and after pictures, the dramatic career leaps, the overnight success stories. But here's the truth very few people want to hear. Those big transformations are almost always the result of small, consistent wins stacked over time. Think of a skyscraper. It's not built by placing the top floor first. It's built one steel beam at a time, one floor at a time, in a sequence so small and methodical it would seem boring to watch. The final reveal looks impressive, but the real work happened in those small, repeated actions no one clapped for. Here's the danger. Most people overlook the power of small wins because they feel too insignificant. Reading 10 pages a day doesn't feel like much. Saving $5 doesn't seem like it will change your financial life. Going for a 10-minute walk won't transform your health overnight. But when these actions are repeated, their impact compounds in ways that are hard to measure in the moment, but impossible to ignore in the long run. Consider someone who wants to get fit. If they try to go from 0 to running 10 miles a day, they'll likely burn out in a week. But if they commit to walking 10 minutes daily, then 15, then 20, they're building a habit that can grow. The key is not the size of the action at first, it's the consistency of it. Small wins have another superpower. They build momentum. When you set a goal that's almost too easy to fail at, you create a string of victories that fuel your confidence. And confidence feeds action. For example, if your goal is to write a book, don't start with, "I will write 1,000 words every day." Start with, "I will write for 5 minutes after my morning coffee." Once that's consistent, increasing the time becomes far easier. The magic of small wins lies in 3 principles. They lower resistance. Big goals can feel overwhelming. Small wins feel achievable, so you start. And starting is the hardest part. They reinforce identity. Every time you follow through on a small win, you cast a vote for the person you want to become. You're no longer trying to be a writer. You are writing daily. They stack into big results. Just as a single drop of water doesn't fill a bucket, repeated drops do. The small win today is the big win tomorrow in disguise. Let's take an example from the business world. Jeff Bezos didn't build Amazon into a giant overnight. In its early days, the company's focus was on selling books online, a narrow, specific small win in the broader vision of becoming the everything store. That small focus built the infrastructure, trust, and customer base that made expansion possible. The mistake many people make is waiting until they can make a big move. But waiting is the enemy of momentum. The right approach is to find a win so small you can start it today, and then repeat it tomorrow. Over time, the wins add up, and the transformation sneaks up on you. If you want to change your life, stop obsessing over giant leaps. Focus on small, repeatable steps that you can sustain. Small wins, stacked daily, create unstoppable transformations. Chapter 6: Breaking Bad Loops. Repetition is a double-edged sword. It can create powerful, positive habits, but it can also lock you into destructive cycles without you realizing it. The routines that are quietly building your future can also be quietly destroying it. These are what I call bad loops, negative patterns that repeat so often they become part of your identity. A bad loop might be obvious, like smoking, overeating, or procrastinating. But it can also be subtle, like constantly speaking negatively about yourself, checking your phone first thing in the morning, or avoiding difficult conversations. Over time, these loops become automatic and the damage compounds. The first step to breaking a bad loop is awareness. You can't fix what you don't notice. Start by identifying patterns in your daily life that leave you worse off, even if they seem harmless in the moment. Maybe every time you feel stressed, you snack. Maybe every time you're bored, you scroll social media. These patterns might feel like harmless relief, but over time, they reinforce behaviors that lead you away from your goals. Once you've spotted a bad loop, the next step is to disrupt it. You can't simply remove a habit. You have to replace it with something else. That's because habits are tied to cues and rewards. If you take away the routine without addressing the cue and reward, your brain will fight to get back to the old behavior. Here's how to break a bad loop in 3 steps. Identify the cue. What triggers the behavior? Is it a time of day, a place, an emotion, or a specific situation? Replace the routine. Instead of trying to stop the habit cold, swap in a healthier action that provides a similar reward. For example, if stress triggers junk food, try taking a short walk or drinking water instead. Reinforce the new loop. Celebrate your small wins, track your progress, and make the new behavior easier to do than the old one. It's important to understand that breaking a bad loop is not about willpower alone. It's about environment, structure, and repetition. If you want to stop eating late-night snacks, don't keep them in the house. If you want to quit checking your phone in bed, charge it in another room. Make the bad habit harder and the good habit easier. One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to fight bad habits in the heat of the moment. By the time the craving or impulse hits, you're already deep in the loop. The real work happens before that moment, by changing your triggers and setting up alternative routines. Think of a bad loop like a deep groove in a record. Every time you play it, the needle drops into the same path. To break it, you have to lift the needle and place it on a new track, over and over, until the old groove stops being the default. This takes time, but with deliberate repetition of a better loop, the brain rewires itself. Remember, bad loops are not proof that you're broken. They're proof that repetition works. It just happened to work against you instead of for you. The same force that built the bad loop can build a good one. The moment you take control of your repetition, you take control of your direction. You've probably heard the phrase, "It takes 21 days to form a habit." It's catchy, it's simple, it's also misleading. The origin of this rule traces back to a 1960s book by Dr. Maxwell Maltz, who observed that it took his plastic surgery patients about 21 days to get used to their new appearance. Over time, self-help authors repeated this observation until it became scientific truth in popular culture. But real research paints a very different picture. Studies, such as the one conducted at University College London, found that habits take anywhere from 18 to 254 days to form, depending on the complexity of the behavior, the person, and the environment. That's a big difference from 21 days. The takeaway? There is no magic number. The habit takes as long as it takes, and that's okay. Why does this matter? Because the 21-day belief can actually hurt you. If you expect a habit to feel automatic after 3 weeks and it doesn't, you might think you failed or that you're not disciplined enough. The truth is, your brain is still wiring the new behavior. You're in the middle of the process, not at the end. Think of habits like planting seeds. Some sprout quickly. Others take months before you see anything above ground. Just because you can't see instant growth doesn't mean nothing is happening. Beneath the surface, roots are forming. Connections in your brain are strengthening. Quitting too soon is like digging up the seed to check if it's growing. The length of time it takes to form a habit depends on 3 main factors. Complexity of the habit. Drinking a glass of water after waking up is simpler than working out for an hour every morning. The easier the action, the faster it sticks. Frequency of repetition. The more often you repeat the action, the faster your brain adapts. A daily habit forms quicker than one you do only twice a week. Emotional and environmental cues. Habits tied to strong emotional rewards or stable environmental triggers tend to lock in faster. Understanding this frees you from the frustration of arbitrary deadlines. The goal is not to make it in 21 days. The goal is to keep showing up until the habit is simply part of who you are, no matter how long that takes. Here's the truth that matters more than any number. Once a habit becomes automatic, the effort drops dramatically. You no longer have to negotiate with yourself about whether to do it. It happens, because it's who you are now. But to get there, you must push past the early days when it still feels like a choice. This is why persistence matters more than perfection. Missing one day doesn't erase your progress. What matters is getting back on track quickly and keeping the repetitions going. Habits are built on the total number of times you've done them, not on a perfect streak. So let go of the 21-day myth. Replace it with a better truth. The habit will form when you've repeated it enough times for your brain to make it the default. Whether that's 21 days, 60 days, or 200 days is irrelevant. The clock doesn't determine your success. Your repetitions do. Chapter 8. Turning pain into practice. Most people run from pain. They avoid discomfort, shy away from challenges, and seek the easiest path. But here's something the highest achievers understand. Pain is not just an obstacle, it's raw material. When you learn to channel pain into repeated, constructive action, you turn life's hardest moments into your greatest advantage. Pain comes in many forms. Physical pain from pushing your body, emotional pain from rejection or loss, mental pain from uncertainty and failure. The instinct is to escape it, but when you always avoid pain, you avoid growth. The gym hurts before it strengthens you. Learning a skill frustrates you before it becomes rewarding. Building a business exhausts you before it liberates you. Repetition is the bridge between pain and transformation. The first time you face discomfort, it's intense and unfamiliar. But with repetition, your capacity grows. A runner who struggles to complete 1 mile eventually runs 10, not because the pain vanished, but because they trained their body and mind to handle it. Here's how to turn pain into practice. Reframe the discomfort. Instead of seeing it as a signal to stop, see it as a sign you're expanding your limits. Pain often means you're doing something meaningful. Focus on controllable actions. When life hits you with challenges you can't change, anchor yourself in actions you can repeat daily. This keeps you moving when emotions would otherwise keep you stuck. Anchor new habits to struggle. If you're going through a tough season, use it as a starting point for change. Loss can lead to gratitude practice. Stress can lead to exercise. Failure can lead to skill building. Real-life example. Think about someone who just went through a painful breakup. They could sink into isolation, or they could start a daily habit of journaling, exercising, or learning something new. The pain doesn't disappear overnight, but each repetition transforms that energy into progress. Months later, they're stronger, not because time healed them, but because repetition rebuilt them. This works on a professional level too. An entrepreneur whose first venture fails can choose to quit, or they can analyze what went wrong, take one lesson at a time, and apply it to the next attempt. Over time, repeated adjustments turn initial failure into eventual mastery. It's important to understand that pain is not a permanent state. It's a signal. If you respond to that signal with repeated constructive actions, the very thing that hurt you can become the reason you grow. This doesn't mean you seek pain for the sake of suffering. It means you refuse to waste the pain you inevitably face in life. The most resilient people aren't those who avoid hardship. They're the ones who turn hardship into fuel. They take the sharp edges of their experience and grind them down through repetition until those edges become tools. And every time they do, they increase their ability to handle whatever comes next. So the next time you face pain, don't just ask, "How can I get past this?" Ask, "How can I use this?" Then choose one small action and repeat it until the pain becomes progress. That's how you turn life's toughest moments into stepping stones for your future. Chapter 9. The Compound Effect in Action. If repetition is the force that shapes your life, the compound effect is the proof of its power. The compound effect is the principle that small actions, repeated consistently over time, lead to massive results. It's the same principle that turns small deposits into large fortunes, tiny improvements into world-class skill, and daily choices into a completely different future. The challenge is that the compound effect works quietly. In the beginning, it feels like nothing is happening. Read 10 pages today, and you don't suddenly feel smarter. Save $10, and your bank account hardly changes. Eat one healthy meal, and you don't drop a clothing size. The results are invisible until they aren't. Picture a glass of water and a dropper. Each day, you add a single drop. For weeks, it looks like the glass is barely filling. But keep going, and eventually the level rises enough for everyone to see. That's the compound effect. At first, it hides. Then, it explodes. This is why most people never see it work. They quit in the invisible phase. They plant seeds but stop watering them before the roots have a chance to grow. They go to the gym for 2 weeks, don't see results, and give up. They start saving money but stop when the amount still feels small. The real magic happens only after consistent repetition over a long enough period. The compound effect also works in reverse. Neglecting your health for a week doesn't destroy you, but repeated over years, it leads to major consequences. Spending slightly more than you earn each month doesn't cause immediate disaster, but it compounds into crushing debt. This is why every repeated action is either a deposit or a withdrawal from your future. In real life, the compound effect is everywhere. A writer who commits to 300 words a day will complete a 90,000-word novel in a year. A person who walks 30 minutes a day will log over 10,000 minutes of movement in 12 months, improving health without a single intense workout. An investor who adds a small amount to their portfolio each month will see exponential growth over decades, thanks to compounding returns. The key to unlocking this principle is patience. You don't plant a tree and demand fruit the next morning. You water it daily, trusting that time will do its part. The compound effect rewards those who keep going when results are not yet visible. The rule is simple. Focus less on the size of each step and more on the fact that you're still stepping. Over time, the steps add up to a journey you could never have imagined at the start. And when people see your overnight success, you'll know the truth, that it was built one quiet repetition at a time. Chapter 10. Resilience through routine. Life is unpredictable. There will be days when motivation is low, when challenges feel overwhelming, when nothing seems to be going your way. In those moments, it's easy to slip back into old habits or stop moving forward entirely. This is where the real value of repetition and routine shines. It builds resilience. Resilience isn't just about toughing it out. It's about having a structure that carries you forward when your emotions would otherwise pull you backward. And the best structure you can have is a set of routines so ingrained that you follow them even when you don't feel like it. Think of your routines as anchors. The world might be a storm, but if your anchor is strong, you won't drift far. When you've repeated a positive behavior enough times, it becomes your baseline. That means even on bad days, you still hit a minimum standard of action. You may not run a marathon, but you'll still take a short walk. You may not write a chapter, but you'll still jot down a paragraph. This consistency is what